June 18th, 1815, a muddy field south of Brussels called Waterloo. Napoleon Bonaparte studies the ground through a spyglass and orders his gunners to wait. The rain the night before has turned the fields to soup. He delays his attack until noon, giving the ground time to dry. That single decision buys the Prussians 6 extra hours to march to the battlefield. In the world that actually happened, those 6 hours were enough. But consider a different ground, one slightly firmer, one morning without rain. Napoleon attacks at dawn instead of noon. By the time Marshal Blücher's Prussians reach the field, Wellington's line has already broken. The Allied center collapses near the farmhouse at La Haye-Sainte. Wellington himself is forced into retreat toward Brussels. Napoleon does not just win a battle, he wins back an empire. News reaches Paris within 2 days. The city that had already begun whispering his name again erupts. The provisional government, barely a month old, collapses without a shot fired. Napoleon enters the capital not as a fugitive, but as an emperor restored twice in 1 year. Across the continent, the reaction is immediate. Austria, Russia, Prussia, and Britain had formed the Seventh Coalition specifically to end him. A victory at Waterloo does not end that coalition. It hardens it. Within weeks, armies mobilize on 3 fronts. This time, there is no illusion of 100 days. This time, the war is total. Historians in this alternate timeline call it the Second Coalition War, stretching not months, but years. Blücher, humiliated at Waterloo, refuses to retreat again. Russian forces cross into German territory faster than before, because the Tsar sees no room left for negotiation. Britain's Royal Navy tightens its blockade on French ports, starving the war machine of supplies. Napoleon, meanwhile, faces a problem that never changes across any version of history. France cannot fight all of Europe forever. His armies, rebuilt in haste during the 100 Days, are younger and less experienced than the veterans lost in Russia and Spain. By the autumn of 1815, in this alternate telling, a second and larger battle unfolds near Kassel in central Germany. This time, the coalition brings overwhelming numbers. Napoleon's genius for maneuver cannot offset the arithmetic of 3 armies converging on one. He is defeated again, this time more completely, at what historians name the Battle of Kassel. There is no St. Helena in this version. Instead, coalition leaders, wary of another escape, another 100 days, choose permanent exile on a British-controlled island far more remote. Some accounts describe a fortress on Ascension Island in the Atlantic, isolated even from the isolated. Napoleon dies there years earlier than he did in the timeline we know, worn down not by illness alone, but by the total collapse of everything he had rebuilt. But the deeper question is not what happens to Napoleon, it is what happens to Europe. A prolonged Second Coalition War, fought across German and Italian states already destabilized by years of French occupation, delays the very idea of a unified Germany by a generation. Otto von Bismarck, born in 1815 in our timeline, grows up in a world scarred by fresh war rather than settled peace. The balance of power negotiated at the Congress of Vienna, which in reality shaped European borders for decades, is instead negotiated under the shadow of a second war nobody wanted to fight twice. Some historians argue this alternate outcome accelerates nationalism across the continent. Others argue it delays it by exhausting the very populations who would have carried it forward. What is certain in this version of events is that Wellington's reputation never becomes what it became. He is remembered not as the general who ended Napoleon, but as the general who nearly lost the war for Britain. His political career, which carried him to prime minister in the real timeline, stalls under the weight of that single defeat. The ripple reaches further still. Without a swift and decisive end at Waterloo, the wave of conservative restoration across Europe takes longer to settle in. Some historians speculate revolutionary movements later in the 1800s, weakened in reality by decades of stability, might instead find fertile ground years earlier. It all traces back to one battlefield, one morning, and a matter of hours. In the world we live in, the ground dried just late enough. In this one, it did not.